Welcome, everyone. This is 2024 American Osteopathic Colleges of Ophthalmology, Otolaryngology, and Head and Neck Surgery mid-year conference. The topic is very exciting, the 4 chores of a doctor. And I'll talk to you about the chores and why we chose this topic. But before we do anything, I can see that people who have said hi. This is a way of Ralph and Mackenzie to take attendance as well. So if you can say hi, that would be fantastic. In the chat, please. That's Dr. Trainer. He's out of Phoenix. So please say hi in the chat. That's like an easy way of taking attendance rather than asking if you were you there, were you not there? So, and I see people are also introducing that where they're from. That's I'm in Albuquerque. So where are you? Let's see, Pittsburgh, Toledo, Sandusky, Ohio, Houston, Texas, Gettysburg, okay, Las Vegas, Akron, Ohio, Phoenix, Cal St. George, and wet central Pennsylvania, Davis, California, Pittsburgh, more Pittsburgh, Timor-Leste, whoa, is Michigan. We have more people joining in. Very good, wonderful. So when this particular conference is following the format that we have had before, in which we have a topic, but it's not what you learn. But first of all, why you learn that, and at the same time, how you learn becomes very important. How is everything. Why is how you remain to keep you motivated, but how makes any learning impactful, memorable, so you can apply it in your real life as well. So at this point, I will slowly open to you what we have been doing actually for about 2 months. Not just me, but there are 14 other people from your colleges. And for the first time, we don't just have practicing doctors. We have 3 medical students also who went on this journey with me, who went on this adventure with me. And I'm so excited. I got to meet all these people. I got to talk to all these people. I got to teach these people, but also learn from them. So this program and the way you're seeing it today and the way we are presenting it today, even the documents, they grew with their contribution, with their learning, and how they told me that works and that doesn't work. In the true spirit of lifelong learning, which is one of the pledges in American Osteopathic Association, that a physician must commit to lifelong learning. And so we are living the spirit of osteopathic pledge. There are other parts to the pledge, but this to me is the central core piece of any physician moving forward in their professional life or personal life. So 2 months ago, when we started this journey, I shared this article, I shared this document with these people. And I'm going to show you the document because later on they're going to tell you their stories, what they did. But this is just the first of the things I'm going to show you, because as today and tomorrow, I'll show you more. Okay, so the first document that I shared, I call it the training document. So we have sent documents to you today. There are 4 of them. One is called the pre-program prep. That's 4-hour CME. I'll walk you through that later. But this particular document is a PDF called training. You don't have to have it open. If you want to have it open, that's fine, because I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through it anyway. And so as I'm walking you through it, let's see what you make of it, but please use the chat to speak with me and to interact with me. So here. Okay. Can everybody see that I'm sharing this screen in this training document? Yeah? Yes, thank you. That is the document that I shared. Okay. And it's fairly simple. It says big 4 chores of a doctor made easy. High yield hacks for speaking, emails, meetings, and delegating. Those are the 4 chores.
Cool. Okay, so what do we got now? You had asked me about adapter for the host. Do you have those?
Hello?
To be honest,
Hello?
from us, it'd be such a markup, it's not worth it. So
Hi, somebody needs to mute themselves, please.
have the auto card.
Okay.
Buy it online. There's the website they browse.
Hello?
These terms that are correct, if you don't forget one.
Okay, yeah, well, my buddy owns the house.
Hello, can you please mute yourself? Okay, I'll have to figure out how to mute all. There you go. Okay. So, well, let's be kind to each other. So it's just, simple things. Okay. First big chore is muting. Thank you, Sean. So, and I muted everyone except myself. Yes, and that becomes a big deal. And I'm going to show you a trick. If you have a loud mouth in your meeting, I'm going to show you how to keep them muted too, especially in a live meeting. Yes, in a live meeting. Okay. So the idea is that when you are progressing in your career, particularly once you are a few years into it, and even when as a student or as a resident, you're seen and asked to step up to do some leadership like things like chief residency or even running meetings, these things are very, very valuable. Even when you write something to someone else, when I say speaking, it can work for writing as well. And these are high yield field tested techniques, and they do help you rise up. They help you be more confident when you rise up. And a lot of these are shortcuts and workarounds that I'm going to be sharing with you. And my promise to you is this, that you'll be able to create any speech, even a quick article within moments without ChatGPT, and appear professional and authentic, because I'm going to show you an old 3-part method. So when you speak, others will listen. And you'll stop causing mayhem with your own emails and messages. You'll tame your own outbox. There are 6 reasons to send a message methodology. Tame your inbox by building a buffer around it, and you won't feel urgency to respond to each and every message right away. So how do you do that? I'm going to teach you how to have shorter meetings with greater impact. It works even if you are not running the meeting. Now that's a very, very, very important thing, because even if you are not running the meeting, how can you take charge of the meeting and make it more impactful and bring it online? And finally, use the best of you and others by learning the 4-step delegation process. So I'm going to teach you a quick diagnostic, because that solves a lot of problems in delegation. Instead of going through the machinations of delegation, do this, don't do that. If you start off nicely, you'll end up nicely. You'll end up having much better delegation experience. So when I said you'll get to the top, what I meant was this. I really mean there is a sense that when you are trying to be a doctor, medical student, residency, fellowship, it's like you're climbing a mountain. And as you're climbing, you can see the top. You finish your training and you're at the top. But now as you enter the practice, doesn't matter what level of practice, you become aware very, very soon that there's another mountain which was hidden to you that just has become clear. And before, you had a lot of scaffolding in the form of formal training, formal teachers, mentors, guides. You helped each other. And there was definitely a top that you could see. You could do a certification. You could take board exams. Now you're board certified. And now you realize that there is this abyss that's staring at you. So the purpose of doing a program like this, and particularly choosing this topic, is that you can start building a bridge. This is one of the very important parts of a bridge. So you don't have to go down into the valley to get to the next top. And secondly, that old scaffolding, if you try to fall back on that again and again, doesn't work anymore. So this is something new. And this is one of those things where learning these four things will help you get to the top, because the idea isn't that you will do something. The idea is others will also see you doing these things, which becomes very important. You see, now you might wonder, like, how can I make these kind of claims? I am a physician. I still practice medicine, and I'm chief of service of Kingsview Telemedicine in California. And I'm faculty at American College of Healthcare Executives, where I teach doctors and other people who are trying to be leaders in healthcare. And I'm co-author of that book on enhanced physician engagement by Healthcare Administration Press. And overall, I see myself as, guiding lots and lots of people. But as time has gone by, I've been doing this since 2016, I have learned that the way we learn tends to fall back again and again on childish ways of learning. We call it pedagogy, whereas we need to adapt andragogy, the adult form of learning. And that's what I'm showing you now. So when we start this talk, why these four? So speaking, emails back and forth, and running a meeting, and finally delegation, they need for you to master this very, very important skill called communication. And communication is the heartbeat of a workplace. So as you send out things, as you receive things, it's like the heart is pumping out things and things are coming back. And it better work well. Because even when I try teaching leadership, I talk about, look, there is a lot of talk about leadership do this and leadership do that. And it really just becomes secular preaching in a way, as opposed to realizing leadership is just plain followership. Without followers, you don't have leadership. A leader has followers and uses them to make things happen. And I don't even say this is the definition of a good leader or a bad leader or a person who's doing things for good or evil. That's not what it means. It just means that leader has an impact on their followers in a way. And the most important skill that the leader has is communication. And the communication that has impact. So you can rate yourself on scale 1 to 10. Like today, how effectively do you communicate for optimal impact when you speak, when you run a meeting, when you write emails, when you receive emails, or when you try to delegate? Communication is the heart of it. So these chores are at the heartbeat of what you try to do as you progress in your career. And if you have any questions about as I'm opening up this, please ask me in the email, in the chat, sorry, so I can try to answer them as they come up. However, this is one of the most foundational concepts to start with. This sets the context for our learning in this entire conference. Leadership is followership. And this comes up all the time, especially these days when the health systems are getting more and more complex. And doctors are asked to rise up and do more and more things, sometimes to, just to say, like, or acknowledge that every doctor is a leader, or sometimes really from their heart, the administration starts saying that every physician is a leader. And they typically tend to see the leader in a clinical role. However, as you interact with the team, many people will take more formal roles, such as chair of their department, such as medical director of a unit. Then, at that point, you are leading a team at a team level. Some people will rise up even more and even go away and away from the clinical work. And those are people, we call them admins. So doctors can become administrators, and especially these days, more and more doctors are being asked to get to these roles. But what's the fourth way? Any guesses what's the fourth way? The fourth way is where we are sitting today. You can assume leadership in your guild. In my opinion, that's the most noble form of leadership that makes what these 14 people did even more inspiring, because they are contributing to the guild and the professional development of the guild. So, and in fact, assuming leadership roles in guilds is time tested. We have had it for hundreds of years. That's how we survive. If we're going to put together a fight against anything, any existential threat to us. So a physician assuming leadership roles is just going to be thrust upon you without you even liking it sometimes. And that's where, when we talk about communication, the aspect of communication that becomes most important is persuasion. In fact, persuasion is involved in healing as well. This is a book written by two psychiatrists, father and daughter, and Jerome and Julie Frank. Persuasion and healing. Persuasion is involved in healing as well, whether you like it or not. So let me help you see this a little bit clearer, that you have been doing it all along. So persuasion, even though we can think that I am a physician scientist, right? The patient doesn't always see you as a scientist. The patient is looking for you to be a healer. Yeah? And the patient is almost looking at you as a shaman, as opposed to a physician. So then who sits in the middle? Between the scientist, physician, and healer shaman is the clinician. So even when we get a placebo response as a clinician, what do we do? Do we say it's bad, or do we say it's good? What do we say? Do we like placebo responses? Yeah, no? Who likes placebo responses? Tell me in the chat. Yes. When they happen, when patients get better, what do you say? I like them, by the way. And on the other hand, when you start asking scientists, they start having a hard time with it because it's confusing their study. That's where this role of a clinician who uses persuasion. And sometimes people start wondering, I'm a scientist. I tell, like when I have to take a Thank you, Dr. Moise. He said, yes, I am happy they got better. However they got better. That's how a clinician works. So that's where even when you're taking the most scientifically written, legally accurate, informed consent, how you stand, how you sit, how you talk to the patient, is it morning, is it evening, how the patient themselves were on that particular day, makes a huge difference. So the ancient Greeks used to call them rhetoric. It has taken on a negative tone. However, rhetoric is just one part of it. The other part is hermeneutics. Anybody know the definition of hermeneutics? You can Google it and tell me. Hermeneutics is how what you say or write is received. In fact, when people go through leadership training or when they do patient communication training, there is so much stress on what you're saying or how you're saying it, not even realizing how the patient receives it is just as important. So combining these two is how communication works, not just rhetoric. Hermeneutics goes hand in hand with it. And that's what we try to do here. And most of the bulk of the work here is what we have done is workplace speaking. So it's not public speaking, even though that's a whole specialized field. We're focused on workplace speaking for a doctor. Now, why, when you try learning all this, and when we talked about raise to the top and you're going to rise to the next level, is how the people perceive you. How do others see you? How you're positioned in their brain, in their mind. It's also called, brand positioning in marketing, is the most important thing in communication. If you're positioned well, if you have put a lot of strong deposits in your trust bank, even if you mess up, they'll forgive you. And that's where people are really looking for a technical expert. I got it. But when they see you as technical expert, you have co-workers. However, when people you're working with, people who see you that, oh, maybe he's kind of like my boss, you have team members. When they see you as an administrator who can not just make rules, but also make policy, you have employees. However, when they see you as a person who's their leader, then you have followers. And it doesn't matter what position, what situation a doctor is at, you can shoot straight up to that dark green level. So you can see that others are seeing you as their leader. A doctor can lead others, lead the patients to what you want them to do. So they are not just seeing you as another person who they can, who's giving them information just like Google does. And that's where doctors have always played this role where we synthesize information. We make the information accessible to the patient versus, oh, we just have information. So that's where this distinction becomes very, very important, that you're not just seen as a technical expert or a rule enforcer or a policymaker, but somebody who actually makes impact in other people's life. And that can't be done without communication. So that's where being a subject matter expert is important. If they see you that's good. But then they're paying you for your productivity. You're leveraging that. However, when you can be seen as someone who is first among equals, you can hold others accountable. You are really leveraging your title. It can be hard, but once you know how to do it properly. And when you are first among many, people will say, okay, what kind of structure is this person going to provide to me, like in the form of policy? And you have power. Power is very, very important to have. So when I'm saying any of these positions are not bad, it's just that it's a natural progression that you should look for. And as you go up, things get easier. Because when you have the proper positioning that comes with impact, you become the category of one. Things start flowing really, really smoothly. And that's where it becomes very important that you learn what we're teaching you today. So far, I have explained to you that leadership position does not come with title. It doesn't come with certifications. It doesn't come with more degrees. You all have known people who were in those positions and had no leadership position in your mind. Whereas you all know people who did not have a title, but you could follow them. They could lead you. That's the category of one where you have that positioning in the mind of the others and you have no control over them. It's done genuinely, slowly over time. That's where these four chores become very important if you want to climb to the next mountain. Is this clear? Anybody has any question about this so far? Okay, very good. Thank you. So let's start with the first one, which is speaking, workplace speaking. This was a presidential speechwriter, James Holmes, who said this: every time you stand up to speak, you are auditioning for leadership. If you want to have an impact and rise up, this is the skill. This is an investment you have to make. But you can make, so what I'm going to teach you today, you can start making speeches of any kind or even write articles, and you will have more impact. You see, there is a huge problem in workplace speaking. A lot of the times it's disorganized, it's purposeless, it doesn't resonate with others, and it dies. So it's almost like somebody made a speech and nobody even carried outside the door with them. It has no mileage. And generally speaking, poor communication from leaders or people who are supposed to lead others is a root cause of cynicism and burnout with the front-end clinicians. This causes disengagement in people's, your coworkers. This doesn't let your strategic initiatives to succeed. It's like the whole team of admins goes on an away retreat and they come back and nobody even knows what they were doing over there, even though they wrote very flowery documents. So all of that learning, thinking, and planning goes to waste. Okay, now in the chat, this is a very important question. How many strategic plans in corporate America don't even take off? So if 100 plans are made, how many don't even take off? I'm not even saying that they're successful or unsuccessful. What percentage? 85%. Ralph is on to some truth. Anybody else? Anybody else wants to take a guess? How many strategic plans? 90%. Both of you are on to something. More than 90%. Yes. Well, the real number is 70%. But 85 to 90% fail. And the other 10% have like maybe partial success. And by the way, little hint, the ones that do get kind of even started has to be in the top 3. So if you're thinking of getting something done, it has to go to the top 3. Otherwise, it's not even going to be looked at. They will politely just add. They have 50 others, now they have 53. It doesn't matter. But really, it should be the top 3. So that's the number we're dealing with. 90% plans do not succeed. And one of the main causes is poor communication. It's like electricity was trying to be generated, but it did not get transmitted. Like there's an electric power station and had a grid, but the grid failed. However, the three parts to how you build your speech quickly are so simple. They're so simple that you can start doing it today. And even when you start listening to speeches now, you can start seeing who made a good speech, who didn't do such a good job, by just simple three parts. So when you're building a speech, even if you have 3 minutes to build it, you have one quick sheet of paper you can quickly write down. You write down these three things. What's the context? That's what you're going to lead with. What's the concept? What method I'm going to choose? I'm going to teach you the methodology. What's going to be the content? The sad thing is, most of the times people start with the content instead of realizing that without context, the thing is going to die. Nobody's going to care. Okay. For example, I could give you tips and tips and tips all day long, but if you don't realize that this thing will help you get to the next top, so others can see you positioned as a leader in their minds, this whole thing is useless. It won't make any resonance. Let's look at the context. Context is Latin for weaving together. Text is like textile. It's the big picture. It's the big idea. It's the one thing you want them to hear and then take home. And a good speaker or a good writer will command the context from beginning to the end. That's very important. And you can. It takes a little bit of practice, yes, but that's how you stay organized, focused, and useful. And people can hear what you're trying to say. Your agenda is clear. And most importantly, you are part of the context. You're not out of the context. You set the context why anybody should listen to you. Okay. So, most common mistakes: not having a clear context, not explaining it, and explaining your context instead of listening to theirs. If it doesn't solve any of their problems, why would they care? You could make the most flowery speech. You'll come across as a self-obsessed bore. You have all heard people who talk like this, and some of them try to make humor, which also doesn't land. So when you're preparing to speak, when you're preparing to write, you have to focus on their why. And if you don't tell them, how would they know? And that's the other problem. Sometimes people feel like they will explain this all at the end. No, 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 no. You have to explain it all right up front. So if they have any problem or questions or confusion, it can be clarified why they should listen to you. Now, let's look at how to build your context. Your context has only three parts to it. The first one is, why this? Why this? And the easiest way to say why this is, by the end of our talk, you should be able to do this. Now, who remembers the promise I made to you at the beginning of this speech? Tell me in the chat. Who remembers that? Anybody? Anybody remembers? I made promises at the beginning. That is in the agenda, and that's in our learning objectives. Do you remember what were the learning objectives? Every CME program like this has to have learning objectives. That's where you write your promise. So does anybody remember those? Do you remember? What did I promise? Anybody? No? Man, did you guys go to sleep? Okay, these were the promises that I made. You'll create speech within moments and appear professional. Will stop causing mayhem with your outbox. you'll tame your inbox, you'll have shorter meeting with greater impact, and you'll use the best of you and others by mastering delegation. Now, do you remember it? Yeah, yeah, no? That's the why this. Yes, thank you. Now you remember. That's the promise you have to make. And then, of course, you have to keep it too. And then the next one is why you? Why they should listen to you? Who are you? Why they should listen to you? Okay. This is where the ancient three-part method where you talk about your ethos is very important. Aristotle wrote it in his famous book called The Rhetoric, the treatise on persuasion. So that's where what has been your experience with this topic at hand? So even if, let's say, they see you as a surgeon, but you're trying to teach others, you have to tell them why they should listen to you because you have done the surgery 50 times, 500 times. You have been doing it for 50 years now. How about you doing it for the first time? What kind of ethos does that earn you? So you have to earn the right and the trust of the people. So as soon as you can clarify these two things, why this and why you have set the context in the person's mind. And that's where a lot of the times patients go through a lot of anxiety when the doctor doesn't explain what their experience has been with doing this treatment. Instead of saying, oh, I'm an ophthalmologist. So what? The patients want to feel confidence in you. And this is what helps them feel confident in you. That you at least even respected them enough to tell them that you have experience doing this. So you can calm their anxiety. Instead of relying on anesthesia to help them stay calm. So, or anesthesia alone. So that's where Aristotle called this establishing personal credentials. So people can trust you. The trust is everything. This is the trust part of ethos. The next is pathos and logos, which we will talk in the content building. Because sometimes when I'm presenting and say, well, what are the other two of Aristotle? He wrote about ethos, pathos, logos. And ethos belongs everywhere in your context and content. But pathos and logos go strongly in your content. And this is how you position yourself as the person they can and will trust. This goes in the About Me section. So when people open a website, this is the most read part of a website. Even when they are looking you up on your hospital's website or your personal website, that's the section they're going to read. And what you say to them there makes a big difference. So that's where people, again, make a claim. I lost 20 pounds in 3 months and 3 weeks, and I can teach you this. And in my experience, ethos is the most neglected part of speaking for doctors. Even when doctors try to speak to their team members, they try to rely on their title as opposed to telling their team members what their experience has been with this thing. What if they have training a different way? So out of respect for your team members, you will tell them what your experience is. One of the best ways, by the way, for a surgeon to earn the trust is just explaining what you're going to do and where things can go wrong, how you can prevent those things from going wrong, and teach new staff, old staff, you're going to implement new things. So that teaching where you respect them and tell them that's what I know, that's what I don't know, is at the root of everything. That's how. And I'm saying this, that if you start practicing communicating like this becomes very easy. Even when you're asked to speak to other doctors, even when you're asked to speak to C-suite, even when you're asked to speak to insurance providers, you're going to talk to them. If you start with positioning and starting with your ethos, you will land more impactfully. However, this doesn't come in one day, so you'll have to practice it regularly so you can get there. It's that simple. Okay. So, and when you build it, the two steps are absolutely necessary. You say with clarity and conviction, I speak to you as this. Now, your role, I speak to you as your medical director. I speak to you as your fellow physician. I speak to you as your chief medical officer. I speak to you as this. And my experience with this is this. And this particular thing, that's how these two things, I speak to you as, and my experience and journey has been this. That's it. These make for the best stories as well. But if you feel like you need to write something better, write even more emphatically, you can use a metaphor. Who are you like in this? Sometimes people ask me about Yoda over here on my shoulder. Anybody notice Yoda right there? Have you seen Yoda? So yeah, thank you. So people bring up, I say, well, I'm Yoda to the Luke in you. There's a Luke hiding inside you, and I'm going to bring him out. And when I expand your mind, it never goes back to its old state. So that metaphor works for me very, very well. And where you can take them on this journey instead of them going on their own, why they should trust you. And this is very advanced, how you're different from others. And yeah, they can see at least you're being respectful of them. But if you feel like you have to tell them that this is very different, you should tell them that we have been doing those things, or you have been doing those things this way, but this is why we're going to do it different. And when you set the context, you have to tell them what you will do. You're going to choose to do one thing well instead of doing all three poorly. Are you going to inform them? Are you going to inspire them? Or are you going to influence action? Okay, tell me in the chat, what is the easiest to do? Inform, inspire, or influence action, which is affecting their thinking or feeling or how they act. Which one? Inform. Yes, thank you. Information is easy to give. Yes, thank you. To inform is the easiest. Inform. Ugh. Information is coming out like garbage these days. And it is, and which one is the hardest to do? Inform, inspire, or influence action. Influence action. Yes, thank you, Lori. Yes, see, that one is the hardest. Be it your patient, be it your team members, be it even your family members, or even yourself. You know, this is sort of like such a meme that, yes, thank you, Dr. Smith, thank you, Chad, that we, so it's like a meme going around saying, oh, they're lazy and all they want is money. So they are lazy and all they want is money. Well, then what the hell are you a leader of? Why shouldn't we replace you with AI if you're not able to get anything done? If you can't inspire people, and yes, that's true. Thank you, Dr. Morris. He said truly inspire others is also very hard. And inspiration and motivation are important. At the same time, even that doesn't sustain action sometimes. So sustaining action is a very, very hard thing to do. That's what we were talking about when we were talking about strategic plans. So that's where you have to choose what you're going to do. And then you will know how hard it's going to be. Or maybe you need to start here and then do that and then do that, that kind of a thing. Whereas sometimes people try to influence action and then they try to threaten them or try to, it's like carrots and sticks type situation. And most other people are like, well, I don't really care about that. It's so much more fun to punch you on the nose rather than listen to your rules and trying to threaten me with the rules, that kind of a thing. But that's where in your speech or writing, you can choose. So then at the end, you can do that. So, Dr. Snow said to inspire is to change thinking that can become a lasting behavior change. Well, you will be surprised at a corporate level, it is very, very difficult to do, to sustain inspiration or motivation, and to have a culture change, which means more than one person will make that change. But that's where we're not so when I'm talking about the change here is not change in you. I'm talking about change in others and how you will motivate that at a bigger level. So that's where when you're speaking to others. You're communicating to others and you have to choose what to do. Thank you. This is good discussion going on, by the way, in the chat. So this is a little bit of an advanced thing. So when you're writing the context, the two things which are very, very important are why this and why you. Why should they listen to you and why what you're saying is important? Ethos is very neglected part for doctors. They don't even say it. Whereas saying it, clarifying your role and what your experience has been, so you can generate trust is important. This is just an advanced tip. When you're writing the context, think like, how would you explain it to a 7-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 37-year-old or a 70-year-old, a child, a teenager, a mid-career doctor, or a doctor who's maybe retired or an older person? This will give you 4 ways to say the same thing, and then you can command the context even better. That way, you will be forced to simplify your saying while solving problems at the same time, and maybe give them some aspiration or wisdom as well. You can choose whichever version you want, but you can say it so many different ways. So when you're speaking, sometimes people are asking you to clarify. This way, you have more than one way or to say the same thing. So a quick summary of the context is start with the purpose why they should listen to you. Make a promise by the end of today, you should be able to do this. This is one of the easiest things to say and do. By the end of today, we should. By the end of today, I should. Anything, it doesn't matter. By the end of today, we should be able to do this. That's how you say it. Now, this last part, that's where when we say you have to choose what to do, inform, inspire, or action or influence action. In speaking, it's called call to action. Call to action is where good speakers almost always start building their speech or writing. And are you going to focus on informing, inspiring, or influencing action? This is where most good speakers will start. And then they will reverse engineer the purpose of the talk and then choose the promise and choose the ethos based on that. Why they should learn this information from you, why they should feel inspired by you, or why they should do things differently based on what you're saying. It always starts with good call to action. And then that makes it easy to understand the next part, which is the concept. And before you even think about the content, what is it that you want to accomplish? You start with that, you reverse build it from there and say the relevant things instead of saying irrelevant things, which have nothing to do with what you want them to do at the end. So any questions about context before we move on to the concept, which is also very, very ignored part of speaking and writing. The concept is going to help you choose when to inform, when to inspire, when to influence action as well. That's almost like the kind of didactics you will choose, maybe kind of pedagogy or andragogy you will use, or the way of teaching you will use. Let's look at that. Let's look at the concept. First part is context, second is concept, third is content. We dealt with the context. Let's look at the concept. You always have to aim for optimal learning and growth. So that inform, inspire, and influence action has to deal with this. Are people going to stay in their comfort zone, or are you going to throw them in the zone of panic? And that's where having a good context is going to draw them out of their comfort zone, and they will trust you with your ethos without going into panic. So you're not just saying, oh, well, if you don't do this, we're going to punish you. Or, you'll earn more money if you do this. Whereas they are totally fine, comfortable in their comfort zone. That's where the good context and good trust in you will put them in learning and growth, as opposed to keeping them in comfort zone or trying to get them into panic. The second part is you can choose your mode. You can choose if you're going to educate. You can choose if you're going to train. I'll show you the difference between education and training. You can choose if you're going to mentor or you're going to coach. People confuse those two all the time. And how will you know what to do is deeply rooted in this old coaching methodology called skill-will matrix. It has existed since the 1960s and is a wonderful tool in andragogy. It's not used in pedagogy much because the teacher is running the whole show. You should learn this. This is the material you should learn, as opposed to adult learning, where somebody's skill and will is going to matter a lot. Let's draw this matrix. Who has seen this matrix before? Anybody seen this? Has anybody seen this matrix? It's called ability, and people rename these things all the time. An ambition matrix. Dr. Morris has seen it. Yes, who else has seen it? So when you draw the matrix, you draw 4 quadrants. In this quadrant, person has no skills and has no will to learn. This quadrant, person doesn't have skills, but a lot of will to learn. Person over here has a lot of skills, but has lost the will to learn. Person here has lots of skills, lots of wills, appropriate skills. So what would you call in your life stage this stage to be, where you didn't have a lot of skills, but a lot of will to learn? What was that stage, or what has that stage been? What would you call that? Who does that? Medical school, yes. Pre-med, yes. Residency, especially first, second year of residency. You are, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to learn, and the skills are not there. What do you call this? Well, there are a lot of skills, but the will is kind of going down. This is a hard one because sometimes we see it and we don't like to admit it. Burnout, yes, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Man, that is good, because this is where some people feel like they're burning out, but they're actually languishing. A doctor who's like 10 years out of training, that's an accurate description, because they feel like they're stuck. A lot of skill, but they don't see what to learn next, what to do next, and whatever is shown to them sounds like more and more pedagogy versus solving their problems or seeing them how to climb the next mountain. What would you call this person who has a lot of skill, a lot of will? That's your next boss. I'm kidding, because people who are highly productive and ambitious, they typically, and what I see is that if you can keep the flame of ambition burning, this person can easily climb up here. Mid-career leader, yes, that's a mid-career leader who still has ambition burning inside. They have the skill and they have the will to learn, because andragogy means everything is learning, even if you fail. So it doesn't matter. That is a very, very good way of describing it. What is this person who has no skills and has no will? So person who doesn't have skills, optometrist. So this is generally a person who is gonna fall into disruptive behavior person. This is the kind of person who is going to be needed to be repositioned. I'm not saying getting fired, because it's sometimes hard to fire doctors, but then nobody wants to work with them. But now this is sort of like a little crude way of describing too. It's hard to really, pigeonhole people. So the person, so now I'll show you. You'll do 4 things: educate, train, mentor, or coach. Educate, train, mentor, and coach. This person, no skills, has a lot of will. What do they need? Education, train, mentor, and coach. What do they need? Any guesses? You won't be wrong. Don't be scared. But generally speaking, they respond to good education and training, because you're going to show them what to do and walk them through a system that is already there. Training and education, yes. But training is going to be heavy in the doctor's life at this stage. So, for example, if a doctor says, oh, I have to do leadership training, and they're giving you lecture after lecture on, oh, doctor, leader should do this and leader should do that, it's going nowhere. You don't have any hands-on skills being taught. It's going to be very boring. Training has to dominate in this place as compared to just education. Yes, they need education as well. So now this is another question. Person who has a lot of skill but is losing the will, feeling languishing. What do they need? Education, training, mentoring, or coaching? First, they may need all. What's the one thing they need first? Coaching, yes. Thank you. Coaching is something that also starts with why. What do you want and why? And that's where helping them find that will is very important. Instead of saying, why don't you learn this and then you'll be okay? Why don't you learn to meditate and you'll be okay? That's not how any of this works. This person, skill and will both, they're present. What do they need? Education, training, mentoring, or coaching? Any guesses? First, I mean, again, I'm not saying they need education. They can take coaching. Yes. Mentoring. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Chad. Mentoring and opportunities, which a mentor can open up. For example, a lot of doctors have never done a job that was ever advertised, because a mentor opened up those doors for them, and mentors created jobs for them. So instead of them looking for jobs that were advertised and then they were doing some kind of weird salary negotiations. The person who doesn't have skill and doesn't have will, now we know that's the only thing left. You have to start with education with them and see how they respond. Good education with good context, ethos building, trust building, if that makes any difference or not. But that's very hard to do sometimes. So this is like a quick way of realizing when you're going to speak, when you're going to write, who are you talking to? What do they need? How will you inform them in a training mode or mentoring mode or coaching mode or just plain education? What if they don't have education? They don't know. Or are you going to do, are you going to choose other modes? In fact, I'm going to give you a heads up on delegation. When you are going to delegate to someone, are you going to educate them, train them, mentor them, or coach them? I'm taking an ideal situation because most of the times you'll do all of them. But what is the one thing that you will do the most in the beginning? Coaching. Yeah, well, when they're implementing it, they will need coaching. But when you choose them, if they don't have the will, what are you going to do? Are you going to ask like questions why they don't want to do it? Then your coaching is going to fail. If you are trying to delegate to someone who needs coaching. So what do you do when you have to delegate to someone? What do you think? Who is the candidate who's going to be ideal? Thank you, Chad. He said ideal is mentoring. You pick someone who has the will and the skill to do that thing that you're going to delegate them to. Thank you, Dr. Smith. Plus skill, plus will. That's the answer. Sometimes you have to upskill them with the training, but they have to have a will to learn. But if they already have the skill, that's the person you start delegating to. But delegation needs some training and coaching eventually. Yes, I get it. But you start with someone, ideally speaking, someone who has skill and the will. You say, yeah, I know how to do that. And they want to learn how you do it so they can just take it over from you, as opposed to you're spending all your time, motivating them, inspiring them, figuring out why they will do it or why they won't do it, that kind of a thing. So I'm giving you a heads up because we're going to use this over there, but it'll save us time. Okay. So even after you have set the context with good ethos as well, you have a call to action that's going to come at the end. You will choose the people you're talking to. Are you educating them, training them, mentoring them, or coaching them? That's where listening is at the center. I get it. But showing, okay, let's look at it. I've already given you the hint. Telling, asking, and showing predominantly will happen in one or the other mode. Which mode has predominantly telling? Training, coaching, or mentoring? Where a lot of telling will happen, as opposed to asking or showing. Training, thank you. Teller's mode, it's an active mode. Where will a lot of asking happen? So we have coaching left and mentoring left. Coaching, yes, thank you. Thank you, Chad. Coaching. So there's only one left. Where will a lot of showing happen? In mentoring. So mentoring is a lot of showing, someone observing, shadowing what you're doing and learning from that, as opposed to you asking them questions and motivating them, helping them figure out on their own. These are the distinctions. Even when you're teaching, you have to know what you're doing into. For example, training is tell mode. You set up a system, walk them through it. This is what we're doing right now. That's why I'm not making a speech. I'm really training. I'm telling you, I'm giving you a system. I'm giving you step by step. At the end of this, you can use this to build up articles and speeches, and of course, run meetings and write better emails. Okay. Mentoring is showing and coaching is asking them. So in concept, you bring them into optimal learning and growth using good context. Choose your mode that you're going to use, education, training, coaching, or showing, and use skill will diagnostic to know what you're going to do. Any questions about concept? Because that's the part two, context, concept. Because then we get into content. Content is easy. If your context is strong, it's going to take care of the content. But if your context is weak, nobody's going to care about it. Okay, I'll allow me to expand it and help you understand this thing. Content is what you say. It's the patchwork that makes the quilt. It shouldn't be torn. Otherwise, it doesn't look useful or pretty. One of the most important things in content building is having categorical statements, which means clear statements. Just as your context has to be clear, which explains why this and why you, not having clear statements also make the whole thing very weak. You can't be vague or unclear. It's kind of like if someone says, well, is it raining? Oh, I don't know. Let's ask this person. Let's ask that person. This thing is destroying our journalism. Instead of giving us clear information, let's go and ask 10 people. What do you think? Is it raining? No, it's just drizzling. What? Are you stupid? It's not raining. It's a thunderstorm happening. You see, that kind of stuff versus just having clear categorical statements and having too many of them sometimes. Generally, 3 is pretty good. 3 per speech, 3 per article. 1 is good, 2 is good, 3 is really good. 4, 5, 6, 7 is really too much. That's, by the way, Miller's article from 1954 is one of the most cited articles. You can check this article. We can't manage more than 7 plus or minus 2 things. So you have 3 categorical statements, 1 context, 1 ethos. That's 5 already. So how many more are you going to stuff into your speech or when you're talking or in your meeting, right? So you have to have time given to each one of these things. And then you end up with 7-ish, maybe 5 things per speech or per article, whatever you're doing. And relevance comes from, if it's useful or not, if it's going to do something, if it doesn't do anything, then, then it doesn't work. The other problem, by the way, is people start speaking and they feel like others think and talk like them. That's where understanding pathos and logos is very, very important. Understanding ethos is important, but pathos and logos is very, very important. Yes, Dr. Trainer is saying original telephone numbers were based on this memory data. That's absolutely correct. That's why we have the phone area code, but then there are 7 numbers that we can remember. So we could have had more, right? Then we would have more phone numbers, but that's how we can memorize them. Thank you, Dr. Trainer. So the idea that you have to learn that other people think and talk and understand things differently than you. That's where having a good balance of pathos and logos will help you become a better writer or a better speaker. Let's look at what I'm talking about. Finally, you need to have a good editorial opinion as well, which will lead to your call of action as well. So you need to have it very, very clear. And you say it up front so then they can listen to it as you unfold and explain it rather than saying, oh, we're going to do it at the very end. Okay? And in my experience, overusing adjectives and adverbs is a very big problem. The things that end in "ly," largely, mostly, strongly, they make you weak. I see it in doctors' bios all the time. Dr. Singh is a very highly experienced surgeon. It makes you look weak. Even if you say, Dr. Singh is an experienced surgeon, that's okay. But if you say Dr. Singh has been doing this for 10 years, that's sort of a factual statement that tells someone, yes, that's what it, because we don't have categories of experience that says highly experienced, very highly experienced. That I know, especially people in the beginning of their career try saying these kind of things. He's very compassionate and that kind of things. Versus, we have these reviews these days all the time. This is what his patients say about him. That's called social proof, as opposed to saying I'm very compassionate, right? So people are sometimes split when I say, oh, the economy is very strong versus the economy is strong. Which one feels stronger to you, number 1 or number 2? The economy is very strong, or the economy is strong. Which one felt strong? Number 2, yeah. Just shorter. Take all the ly words out, and they really just create a drag on when you're trying to speak. Okay, it gets to the point. Yes, it just tells you what you think, and then you can explain why you think it's strong. And somebody might say, yes, thank you, Skip, which is Somebody might say, well, it's strong, but it's not very strong. And now you have started an argument. Do you see what I mean? So then when you say economy is strong, but there are these problems, and then you can talk about that thing versus economy is very strong. So this is how you position in other people's minds by using simpler, shorter things. Okay. So a simple formula is have categorical statements with editorial opinion. Because people want to know what you're trying to say. It's like saying, we had 15 studies, 7 of them show this, and 8 of them show that. And people are like, okay, what do you want me to do? And then you say, but I have been doing this for 15 years, and I have found that this is really true and that is not. Or you can say, well, I haven't done it, but these 7 studies have this problem, and these 8 studies are much better, and that's why we should follow it. Do you see, giving your editorial opinion doesn't matter, you have to have experience. You can just explain what it is. For example, in the field of sort of, some people say, professional development, leadership development, lots of tools are used, and most of them are pseudoscience. There you go. I made a categorical statement. Lots of tools for personality assessment used in leadership development and personality development are pseudoscience. The top 3 most used are Myers-Briggs, DISC, and Enneagrams, and all 3 are bogus pseudoscience. There you go. I made categorical statements. I know they're objectively true. You can Google them and you'll find them. Do you see what I mean? And I am giving an editorial opinion. For example, the assessment that we use in this training, and then you will hear from the people who went on this journey of using these things, they did a very different one. We call it Virtues in Action Character Strengths. That is peer-reviewed, evidence-based scientific instrument. There you go. Did you hear me make a categorical statement and I used logos and a story right there? Did you see that? Okay, that's how you have to learn to say things. Okay, now the beauty of this system is this: if you have a context that has strong call to action that's going to come at the end, your ethos is strong, then you don't have to stuff content into it. So if you have only 10 minutes to speak and you have 2 categorical statements, you can expand on them. What if you have an hour? You still can have only 2 categorical statements, expand on them using more logos and pathos, or squish them. Instead of, oh, I didn't get time, I had so much data to share, and you didn't share anything properly, and they didn't understand anything because you just spent 10 minutes, rambling on about some data that you had. That's where you have to get people to the end. And then this way you can shorten the middle. The content can be shortened. Okay? So for example, we can even run a 2-day workshop on 2 categorical statements. Categorical statement number 1 on day 1, statement number 2 on day 2, and building more and more ethos and logos and pathos based on each one of the statements. You can do more and more experiential exercises based on just those things. So a good workplace speaker can stick to the topic and guide people with them so they'll feel comfortable working with them. Okay? So that's where, let's look into pathos and logos. Just like the purpose of ethos is to build trust in you so they'll follow you, pathos is all about feelings, the inspiration part, and logos is all about informing and thinking. So then you can influence action if you're giving them the right mixture. So people who tend to be heavy on logos are missing the people who listen to pathos. And people who are heavy on pathos miss the people who have logos as their main way of thinking. So in fact, pathos is all about empathy, showing the big picture, but with feeling. This is where a lot of the times people want pathos to carry everything. That's a very big mistake. In fact, Aristotle didn't like pathos very much. He thought the evil leader will do bad things using pathos, using fear and anger. They will get people, influence action of the wrong kind. And it's very easy to do and manipulate people doing that. That's why rhetoric gets such a bad name. So don't get carried away with pathos. Pathos should support your statements. So your story should support the statement, isn't the whole statement. If you're giving a quotation, doesn't matter how highly you regard that book to be, or that poet to be, or that movie to be. It's supporting your statement, not the whole statement. It's not a proof of anything. So pathos is like to be used like that. You have to talk about pains and benefits. Pain has to be described well so they'll understand that you understand them. Okay. In fact, using story to tell data is very important. Brene Brown, who's a famous speaker, says story is data with a soul. You infuse soul into your data, spirit, by using stories. So you can tell a story. This is how we got to that. How hard is that? So patient care stories, local stories, stories that were educational to you, helped you grow. So if you say 10% of the time this happens and 90% of the time that happens, but if you tell it with a story, this happens all the time, but we have to look for that. What happened when that pain could be difficulties, pain could be a threat, pain could be, yes, Dr. Weigel is asking, are you equating pain with difficulties? Yeah, problems, threats, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm using the word pain because it has an emotional quality to it. It's like the hero is looking at a mountain that has to be climbed so he can free his beloved who's trapped on the top. So that's the pain. So that's where using quotations, movies, poetry, songs, books, it's all fine if you want to use them, but they should support what you're saying, bring an emotion to it. Okay? Using metaphor is important. And I don't mean grammatically, I mean comparison, simile, analogy, whatever you feel like. But try to use similar metaphors. Use things that you're familiar with. Cooking and sports are probably the most used metaphors, right? People use team metaphors, their experience when they played or when they cooked something. Gardening is a common one when people use it. So use something simple that people can universally relate to. Using like obscure Dungeons and Dragons metaphors is just going to confuse everybody. No insult to people who like Dungeons and Dragons, but really using things that, or even if you, thank you, Chad, he said no offense taken. So even if you're gonna bring it in the form of a story. So in Dungeons and Dragons, by the way, there's a character, and the character is called a dwarf. So that's how you kind of explain. And the dwarf in the story isn't really like a dwarf from the Lord of the Rings. So you can explain it. How you explain it makes the story, and you can draw it. Draw. You see, we're going through a kind of a document of training, but I'm drawing as we're going, right? Humor is a big one, but it should only be self-deprecating. Anything else is bad. And if humor is not your strength, avoid it in the beginning. I can tell you, it lands very, very poorly. So don't try telling jokes that have no context or meaning. And finally, so pathos, you can use these to build pathos and support pathos. And please try using them in the beginning to practice. They're not going to land well in the beginning, but then you'll start seeing your own way of talking change, and you'll see that people start responding to you differently. They'll see that you're a kind person who cares about them. Logos, I never have any trouble explaining to doctors about logos. This is the head appealing to the rational part. It's rational thinking. So this is not opposed to empathy. They support each other. Sometimes people want to do it and they don't have enough rational sort of like, foundation. So you give it to them as well. You give them a framework. An algorithm is logos, a national standard is logos, benchmarks are logos. So use them. In fact, in medicine, in CME, in conferences, I see people overusing them. In fact, if somebody describes, patient stories or case history, case story, that lands so much better than trying to stuff the whole talk with data. So if you tell two good patient stories, I'll tell you about two patients today. Patient A, patient B. And this is what happened with patient A. We started like this, and then we realized we needed to use this. And patient B, this is what happened. So you see, if you tell us, even if you're speaking about 10 journal articles, you can tell a case story and then tell logos woven into it. People will respond and remember so much better. Yes, logos will validate the speaker. So if you're telling a story that is like 1 in a million case, it's very interesting. But if that case illustrates, 1 out of 3 patients you're going to see today, oh, you are into it. Okay. So that's where using data, studies, a model, national standard, but you have to give your editorial opinion, never leave it up to people. And if you can, please draw. This works very well in huddles and debriefs before and after your day, or before a case, or after a case, or before or in the middle of the day. If you use what we have done, what we're going to do next, this kind of a speech is a very quick form of speech. And are you going to educate them? Are you going to train them? Are you going to reinforce a learning? This works very, very well if you connect it to the context versus if you don't have a context, if you're just talking randomly and then they can't even remember. So you'll be surprised that putting context makes everybody's life easy. Now, this final thing. When you speak or when you write, having one context, which includes your ethos, 3 content points, which is categorical statements, and finally call to action. That's it. And if you're going to have an hour to present, aim to speak for 25 minutes. You'll be surprised how fast the whole hour will fill up. That's where I use the word decide. The word decide has the same etymology as suicide, homicide, infanticide, whatever sides you can come up with. It means to cut off the other options. It doesn't mean to choose. It means to choose, but it means to cut off other options more strongly. Suicide is to kill self. Homicide is to kill a man. Decide is to kill off your darlings so you don't come across as a rambler. This is hard to do in the beginning. That's where, if you stick to the context and build these categorical statements with pathos and logos, you will be able to kill off the weaker darlings. In fact, if you have one study to share, it's better than sharing 3. 3 is better than 7. That's what I'm trying to say. That give the most appropriate, relevant information. So 1 point well made is better than 3 half-done ideas. Remember that. 1 is enough because you'll have another, then you'll have another, then you'll have another. So that's where when you try doing this, having categorical statements, balancing ethos, pathos, logos, giving your editorial opinion, and deciding ruthlessly. At the end, you can always decide what didn't land properly. No, but so Dr. Morris, when I say 25 minutes, you'll end up speaking for more. That's what I'm trying to say. Dr. Morris is saying if you speak for 30 minutes, I'm saying if you have content for 25 minutes, when you start speaking, it magically becomes an hour. Has that happened to anyone before? Has that ever happened? Because then you can, yes, Dr. Trainer says always. So it's sort of like a practical tip I'm giving to you. It's not to say you'll stop speaking and yes, easier to expand than contract. Because when they introduce you, that's first you go there, there's an hour. 5 minutes, everybody's sitting down. 5 minutes, everybody's introducing you. You're already at minute 10. But if you feel like it's minute 45 and you have 15 minutes, you do Q&A. Or you do some illustration, you can always do more. It's always easier to expand than contract. So the idea is that don't carry material for an hour there. That's what I'm trying to say. I am not saying just go and speak for 25 minutes. It's to say prepare, and then you can expand and contract. You can practice, and if in practice you're speaking in 40-45 minutes, it's going to easily go up to an hour, because you'll be surprised at how time is spent when you're speaking. So this is where we end our talk about how to build your speech, because I'll spend the next time on emails, meetings, and delegation, and that's very, very quick, because that's really high octane, concentrated tips. Okay. So, oh yes, Dr. Trainer says 25 minutes of well completed and well presented lecture will end up having more questions. That is a very, and then you can tell more stories. They ask you a question, you say, yes, that happened to me, and this is what we did. Or you can start interactive, because you can say, oh, well, what do you think about this thing? You know, I've never seen it. And then they can spend a few minutes talking. You can ask the audience what to say, what the other people have seen. So this is where they'll remember. This is very well said. Dr. Trainer said this. So don't start with content. Choose the concept that you will use and start with context. That's what I'm trying to say. Good. Any questions about speaking before we move on to emails? The bane, yes. So that's right, which means that 60 minutes gets spent when you're preparing. Yes, thank you, Sean. That's and I understood that's exactly so. That's a very good explanation. But what I'm saying is that prepare, that you will end up speaking more, but have a tight presentation that can be done in 25 minutes. Is that clear, or am I still confusing everybody? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Which means that time gets spent and wasted a lot. And let's look at a big time waster. Emails. Who loves getting emails? Answering them all day long. Rambling emails, unclear emails. Anybody's, how many emails? Okay. You know, this is an Oscar Wilde saying. And I'm paraphrasing, because he said it very elegantly in 19th century English. But he said something like, you always make people happy, either when you enter the room or when you leave the room. So all so emails are kind of like that. Uninvited visitors who, yes, Dr. Smith loves getting 100 plus random emails in a half day. And people think it's actually a very good way of wasting everybody else's time. So what I have presented so far is going to take a little bit of practice. And I would say in speaking, do context building in the beginning. That's it. And call to action, context, call to action. Focus on that. You'll start going far very, very fast. But this email is ready. Mayhem is in my inbox. We're going to help you that. Okay. Who's ready? The first thing is that when you have mayhem, and Dr. Snow said it, the mayhem in the inbox, the only way to tame the chaos is to start the mayhem that your outbox is causing. Very humbly accepting that you are also contributing to the problem as much as everybody else. It's a very, very humbling position to begin. And that if you don't be clean, this is going to stay dirty. Step 2, which I think is even more important, is these 2 pages that I'm giving you, you can take these to your team, train them, because that's what I mean. I don't mean educate them, train them, and then coach them in using it. And you will go far ahead. And in fact, what's the effect? When you try teaching others that we should behave like this, what will be the effect on you? So if you want others to use this way of writing emails, what will be the effect on you? You will stop causing mayhem first. Okay. There are only 6 reasons for an email or a text message in a workplace. And it should be done only one reason at a time. And there are ways in which you can write 2 or 3 things, and I will teach you that, but that takes a little bit of work and discipline. Before you hit send, look at the 6 reasons for an email or message in a workplace. I'm not saying this is about your love email, this is your personal relationship email. No, 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 no. I'm talking about work emails. Okay. Number 1 is end of message. Has anybody ever heard of this EOM? Who has heard of EOM? Army uses it. This goes in your subject. So the person has a cell phone, otherwise they have to log in to see your message. But when you put EOM in the subject, email popped up, they read your message. Do they even have to open the cell phone to see what you wrote in the email? Yes, no? What do you think? So what do you think? No need to open it. Thank you, Chad. In the subject matter, if your message is just like I'm running 15 minutes late, end of a message, email pops up, they read it. Otherwise, now they saw the message came from you. Now they're like, why are you running late? They have to log in to see why you're running late. Can you imagine how much time will be saved by using this one methodology? End of a message that belongs in the subject. And that leads to number 2. These 2 are the like such a bulk of the emails that go out, which is FYI, no need to answer. Should be in the subject or the first line you say, FYI only, no need to answer. Because otherwise people feel compelled to do what? Noted, thank you, good ideas, I'll read it later. But if you take the burden off from the other person, it's for your information only, no need to answer. Won't you love to get this in the subject? FYI, no need to answer. How many of your emails fall into this category? End of message. Thank you, Charity said, best messages. FYI, no need to answer. You have to do nothing. I'm just giving it to you, that's it. Oh, Sean said, I've done this, it really works. You said no further action needed. Yes, no need to answer, no action needed. You can say that. And the next 3 will save time on meetings. There's that meme, this meeting could have been an email. Who has seen that meme? This meeting could have been an email. Anybody seen this meme? Yes, thank you. Yes, Sean, yes. So the idea we end up having those bad meetings is because we have been writing bad emails. And then when people try teaching about meetings, then they talk about this whole thing. Oh, you should have clear agenda. You should send 3 copies of agendas to people. When you do meeting trainings, that's what I have seen. That's very, very terrible way of living, making more work for you. Good emails make good meetings. Your meeting planning is going to fail if you're writing bad emails. That's where these 3 things, information needed by this time. So if you say, I need information, but you haven't told them when do they answer you? Or if you get a question saying, oh, what time will you do this? Tell me. And then you're like, should I go and do it right now? Can I answer 2 hours later? Or I don't know, I have to look up somewhere. I'll have to open up my calendar to see. But the person says, oh, I need this by tomorrow evening. You can relax, or you can help others relax and say, okay, no urgency, I can do it by tomorrow. Or your input or opinion needed by this time, and action needed by this time. By this time is the key word, and you look for three things: information, input or opinion, or action. Either you want them to sort of give you back some information, or some kind of information kind of synthesis that you want them to give you, or you to yeah, and or you want them to do something. But by this time, then only you get to say this, because information we have pulled together isn't working, our opinions together are not working, we have tried doing a few things, they're not working. Let's meet by this time. And why? The context of a meeting becomes clear that we have tried these things and they haven't working. That's the only way you can make meetings better, is if you adopt these three things, C, D, and E. So this isn't just about emails and messages, this is also about meetings. So the two go hand in hand. So when you want to stop the mayhem, you start yourself first. And if you have people you communicate with regularly, or if you wish your office manager should train the whole team on this, at least there would be some taming of everybody's outbox. You will see this thing becomes easy, because this is secondary. Because this is the context. Remember, context is everything. These six things are the context. Because this is the style, this is the content. And it's okay, you know, ask what you want at the beginning, not at the end, right? You can bolden it, you can italicize things, you can number things. If you're asking more than two or three things, number them and request them. I'm asking you three questions. Please answer all three by this time. Do you realize how often is it that you have asked somebody three questions and they write back to you answering one, not even mentioning the other two? Has that ever happened? Did that ever happen? And then there is a chain that starts. That's regarding this, regarding that, regarding that. It drives you crazy. Yes. That's where this first thing is the context that solves. And that's where the style will work. You say, I'm asking you three questions. Please hit reply and answer all three by tomorrow evening. There you go. So they can say, okay, I'm thinking. Otherwise, they will do exactly what Dr. Weigel and Dr. Slater are saying. It drives us crazy. We're creating mountains upon mountains of these messages, which are useless. And that's how you stop these re chains. And that's where you always have one chain, otherwise start a new one. You say, okay, I'm starting a new one. That old one is gone. These last two are just to make a workplace a little bit better. You can learn to schedule emails. And who doesn't know how to schedule emails? Who does not know? Dr. Castillo doesn't know. Who else doesn't know? Sean doesn't know. Dr. Slater doesn't know. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into each and every one of them. I'll tell you something. Depending on your program, I use Gmail and Outlook. Those are the two predominant ones that I use. There are YouTube videos which will explain to you how to do it. And it's one of the simplest things to do. Why to learn to schedule emails? If you're writing to somebody who's a busy person, Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning is when the messages get read the best. But you only have time on Friday evening. And by Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., you don't have time because you're in surgery. How will you write to them at 8:15 a.m. when they are more likely to open the message? By the way, this is statistically true. Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, maybe Thursday morning is when the most messages get opened. You schedule them. So look up the name of your email program, say how to schedule email in that program. And then practice a little bit, send to yourself, and then you'll become very, very good at scheduling emails. I schedule emails all the time because I want it to be read with impact. So, like it's Saturday morning and you want to write to the CEO and you know that they're busy and you want them to read it on Wednesday morning, schedule it. Otherwise, you're like, oh man, now I have to wait till Wednesday morning. No. So, learning to schedule emails on a scheduled basis. So, Dr. Berndorf is saying, I frequently send out my emails on scheduled basis, works very well for my schedule as well as the recipients. Thank you. This is exactly what we are talking about. Please learn to schedule emails. And they will land better because the timing will be better when they are more in a more receptive mode. And this last one is just a nice thing to do. It's called CC well done emails. If something happens, that's good. Send a well done email and also CC their boss or CC others. And if you can do this at least once a week, that's very, very impactful. I'm not saying once a week per person. Start doing once a week. It's a kindness thing. It'll bring you happiness. So doing these 6 things is the style and the content and that part, but using these 6 reasons is the context of an email. That's how you tame your outbox and stop causing mayhem with your outgoing emails. Good deal? Is that a good deal? Yeah? Very nice. Because you train your team by changing your behavior. Or if you can formally train them, go for it. And use this. You have this document with you. And if you feel shy, use the speaking that I taught you. And if all else fails, call me. I'll come and do it. We can do it. We can do it virtually. So yes, thank you, Dr. Snow. So what we end up doing is taking responsibility first before we expect that anybody else will ever stop causing mayhem. Because the inbox is very difficult sometimes, and that's where taming the inbox takes more work. I've been doing it for almost, I want to say 17, 18 years actively. I finished fellowship in 2004. And I've been doing telemedicine since 2006. So email is our like lifeline. We cover so many sites in Northern California and Central California. Without email, we are nowhere. And that's where taming the inbox takes more work as opposed to taming the outbox, because that's under your control. And because you will always get emails from strangers and you don't know what to do. So what I'm going to say next is about changing others' expectations first on how they relate to you. I'll tell you a quick story. This gentleman was an ophthalmologist. His daughter and my daughter were in the same grade. This is like a while ago. He was like running down with like all the messages and texts. So I said, do the thing number 1 that I'm going to teach you, the 3-2-1. He said, that's not going to work because then they'll send a follow-up message saying, why didn't you answer to that one? I said, well, you have to change their expectations. And it took him 3 weeks. And now I have done it so many times with very, very busy doctors. And the very recent example is that of a pain doctor. He had to really, bite his tongue to do that. And then all the patients, all the people who were referring patients to him, and all the staff that was sending him text messages and emails all day long, they started taking it easy, knowing that he follows the 3-2-1 method. That's why I said it's emotionally harder. And it's also harder with some of the new EMRs where the messages keep on popping up and you don't know what to do. So I can share an idea with you, but this thing is harder to do. So let's look at 3-2-1 method. And 3-2-1 isn't 3-2-1. It just means 3 times a day, no more than 21 minutes each time. It can be 5, 10. Doesn't matter. Fit your schedule. I generally check twice a day, maybe 3. I do 2 to 3 times, but I will easily spend 20 minutes each time because now my mind is there. I'm not getting distracted with all kinds of messages. And if message isn't urgent and needs more thinking from you, I'm going to do it when I'm looking at emails the next time, not right away.
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Okay. So, well, somebody's having fun with their child. So it's fun to hear children's voices and parents talking to them. So, uh, so, so you can always postpone instead of feeling like you have to rush to answer it right now. Because if it's not urgent, it's not urgent. End of story. So just like that, but this second part also takes a bit of work, repetition in training. Because if they can check messages and run interference for you, oh, this patient is calling, they're having a side effect. If they can answer on your behalf, call the patient back, call the pharmacy back, call the call the other doctor back. A lot of your workload gets divided. But this means you'll be delegating staff as well. So train and delegate staff to run interference. I know these two things are hard. And with surgeons, I generally talk about having a time in between surgeries, but I know ophthalmologists, have a flow of surgery going. And that's where having some staff who can run interference for you is one of the best investment you will ever make in taming your inbox. We do it, by the way. That's what we do. That's how we survive. Otherwise, you can imagine how many sites we cover and how many messages we get. And if they all started coming to me, we just can't do it. Whereas staff at both levels, on our level and on the other side as well. So every time we kind of delegate and train them to say, you can do this on my behalf. So please do this before you call me, that kind of thing. So something very simple. I'll give you one example. This patient needs a refill. Okay. And out of context, now I have to go look up who's this patient, what do they need. So we have trained our staff to look up. When were they last seen? When will they be seen again? And what do they need? That kind of a thing. And then, well, Sean is saying, don't most have staff for this? Well, in modern EMRs, sometimes the messages are just popping up and you have to go and check. But if you can do more and more of this and help them answer this for you, is what I'm talking about, no matter where you are. What if you have staff doing it? But if everything comes to you unclear, and now they have to go back and find out something else. So you see, that's where if you can do this 3-2-1 versus you doing it again and again and again and many times a day, that's the way to tame the inbox. How is it sounding like? This one is harder, by the way. And that's where doing this, at least internally, is more important. Starting here will give you quick wins versus trying to tame this, which will take more discipline on your part. Any ideas, any thoughts so far? By the way, the people I have worked with, the 14 that you'll be hearing from, they have used it. You can ask them these questions. Yes, that's right. Urgency of patient problem towards this. But this is a very good point. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if I were to ask you, is every message just as important, just as urgent? Let's put it that way. Because we get urgent messages too. You see, I am a practicing doctor. So is every message just as urgent? Yeah, no. Each and every message that comes to you is just as urgent that you have to run to answer it. Check up the patient's information in the EMR and then try to solve that problem. Is every message like that? So in medicine, we have, and I think by the way, I should talk more about how to train staff. By the way, whenever I do this, every time I learn things. So Sean, you're teaching me right now how to teach this better, which is, and in medicine, we call it triage, right? I should explain more using triage method. And because this is such a bane of our existence. So out of those 100 messages, at the very least, 10 are urgent. I get it. But the other 90 could be something else. So this needs probably more training and discussion and maybe more local understanding. Maybe I should be teaching this better or add this to this, that at the very least, the staff who's running interference should know the most common scenarios. For example, in the case of a refill, what to ask before they even bring the thing to you. And also that information should come to you total. And secondly, triaging them. So which one is urgent, which one is not urgent, which one is just, nothing. So that kind of a thing. So this will take some more training when working with staff. So in that sense, having a sense of triage is going to be very, very important. The beauty of it is this, that if you create this, and if you create a written document, you can share with every new staff member that comes in. That I should add as well. That write as much as possible the details. So who has heard of 80-20 rule? Has anybody heard of 80-20 rule? Create a process. Yes, thank you, Sean. Yes. So in the beginning, it's a bit painful, but then it solves a lot of problems. But who has heard of 80-20 rule? So I'm thinking on the spot, by the way. So, and then because we have used these, but I haven't put this in writing for this particular training. 80-20 rule. Yes, so Dr. Castillo has heard about 80-20 rule. Who else has heard about 80-20? Chad has heard 80-20. 80-20 rule is a mathematical rule, and it works in most human situations, that 80% of your troubles are created by the same 20% of situations and people again and again and again and again and again. Which means that using this kind of methodology, you can expect about 80% of workload to improve and 20% will still remain a bit of an issue. But lowering 80% is a big deal in the first one. And the second time you can lower more of that 20% that's left. So this will be very effective for about 80% quickly, but then the other 20 you'll have to work on. But when you're saying create a process, if you can document the process, then it becomes shareable. These days, that's called LMS, Learning Management System. You can have your own internal LMS. You can even create a video on this thing. You can create a PowerPoint and walk the staff through the video. So you have two, not just a training paper document or e-document. You also have a video explaining to them and then help them apply it. How is it sounding like what I'm saying? Because I'm learning from you as we're going, that I must explain this better. How is it sounding like? Oh, thank you, Sean. Who else finds it useful at this point? That tame your outbox, but taming your inbox will take different kind of work. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So these are just 2 pages that can solve a lot of your time problems.